Hello, friends. This is Eric, the Mind Control Guy. How's everybody doing today? It's coming up on the end of May 2020. I haven't made a video in a while, so I figured I would. And anyway, as you can plainly see, I am seriously against socialism. How'd that work out in Venezuela? You know, socialism and communism is supposed to be so great as these professors and other instructors in our higher institutions of learning here in the United States, colleges, high school, and getting it all the way down to other levels of education. You know, get them while they're young, pollute their minds with poison, and then sometimes it's too late for them to wake up until they're up in years, and sometimes they never wake up. And anyway, you know, I have met people who grew up in countries that were communist or socialist or whatever level of flavor you want to put on it. I met people that grew up in Cuba, and I've told this story dozens and dozens and dozens of times, probably a few hundred times, and I'm going to tell you now. Anyway, uh, back when I first started trucking, back in the early 1990s, it was 1993, and I was in Miami, Florida, at a terminal we used to deliver to down there. And there was a couple of guys that worked on the dock, and they were both Cuban fellers. And so I got to talking to him, and one of the guys, he had been an Army Ranger. He was born in Cuba, and his family came over here. I don't know how they came over here, but he came over here. And he had a twin brother. During an inspection, a general officer, I believe it was, flag grade anyway, asked him, he said, "Where are you from, son?" He said, "Cuba, sir." He said, "What made you decide to join the U.S. military, son?" He said, "Well, sir, this was my way of thanking this country for letting me be here." Good answer, son. Good answer. And this feller, he had been an airborne ranger, and his brother went a little further. He was a Special Forces Ranger, which meant he was a Green Beret as well as Ranger qualified. There was another feller worked on the dock by the name of Frank. Real quiet guy. Wasn't very tall, maybe 5'6", 5'7", just your average looking guy. And I asked him, I said, "So what made you decide to come to the States, Frank?" And he answered me, as far as I'm concerned, he answered me truthfully. He said, when I was in Cuba, I used to be a farmer. One day I was out in my field plowing, and some of Fidel's guys came to my property, came to my farm, and they had grease guns with them. For those of you who don't know what a grease gun is, that is a slang for a submachine gun. And they walked out to where I was plowing in the field, and they said, "This is Fidel's land now. You have to leave." He said, "Well, wait a minute. I work this land. I farm this land. This land's mine." They said, "You have two choices. Leave now or die where you stand." He walked off his property with the clothes on his back. And him and a couple of his friends went down to the shoreline and got a bunch of various pieces of wood and whatever they could find. And they made a makeshift raft and spent 3 days going through 90 miles of shark-infested waters just to get to the States. And he point blank told me, he said, "That's how it is in Cuba." And I've talked to these educated beyond their intelligence idiots, as far as I'm concerned. And they say, "Oh, Cuba's wonderful. They don't have any homeless." According to people like Frank that grew up there and lived it, they said, "Yeah, it's not allowed. It's illegal to be homeless. If you're homeless, you're going to the hoosegow." If they're feeling nice. I used to work with a guy right here in Indiana. He worked for the same company I worked for. He grew up in the country of Hungary, back when it was still communist. And he told me it was a living hell growing up under communism. And he told me he remembers having to go down every day and getting your daily rations, standing in line, getting your daily rations. You're not allowed to have a fully stocked pantry or stocked refrigerator, if you were even allowed to have a refrigerator. And anybody caught with an overabundance of food, God help you. This man, when he was just a teenager, he was about 16 years old, 15, 16 years old. It was in between classes, summertime. And he got stopped by the special police. And they asked him what he was doing. He wasn't up to nothing. And they said, "Why aren't you in school?" You figure somebody in a position of authority like that should know. Nah. They are just out to show their force, show their strength. Whatever other word you want to use. They want to let him know who's in charge. "Why aren't you in school?" "Well, school's out for the summer." "Where do you work?" "Well, I don't have a job." "Why not?" "Well, I live at home with my mom and dad. I'm 16 years old, or 15, whatever he was." And I said, "There's no school. I'm not working. I live at home with mom and dad." Not good enough. That man, as a teenager, during the summer, or whatever year that was, did 6 months in prison on 2 separate occasions. His only crime? Not being in school and not having a job. That was his crime. Even though he was a minor, didn't matter. Now that's the way it is in a communist country. They say, "Well, they got free health care." Whoop-de-frickin-do. Any government that has the ability to give you anything you want also has the ability to take it away at any time. Thomas Jefferson. Now this individual right here is Karl Marx. He was a Jewish guy, and I'm pointing that out, yeah. Because every time anybody else of any other category, the media likes to make sure, we want you to know what race they are. We want you to know what religion they are, especially if you're a white guy like me. Therefore, I'm pointing out Karl Marx was a Jewish fella. The godfather of modern day communism, socialism. This is what they forget to tell you. Making everyone equally poor since 1917. And the guy was a senator of Louisiana years ago, Huey Long, said no man must be allowed to be too rich, no man must be allowed to be too poor. The exact wording, I think, was no man must be allowed to have too much, no man must be allowed to have too little. They don't want everybody being equally wealthy. They want everybody being equally miserable. There was a man years ago that tried to warn us, people of my age, I'm in my mid-50s, our grandmothers and grandfathers. For some of you younger folks, it might be your great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandmothers, great-great-grandfathers. Tried to warn America about the communist infiltration of the country. Very subtly. Insert their people, very crafty, into positions of power, into positions of making policy, into positions of influence, and gradually start changing the human mindset, the American mindset. And we can see how far the communists have come. Myself, like countless others of American people, of all categories, males, females, and by the way, there is only 2 genders, males, females, every category of people, every skin color, every shade imaginable has served in the military. Every religion, Catholics, Protestants, Christians of every flavor, Jewish folks, Muslim, and yes, Satanists have served in the military. And, McCarthy tried to warn us, definitely tried to warn us. And at first that was America's boy. They loved him. And then the Reds saw what was going on and they started their campaign against him. Started their campaign against the man and ruined him. And they finally killed him. Made it look like it wasn't, but yeah. They killed him. They hounded him. Censored him. His own party. Oh, no, no, no. You can't be saying that, Joe. Well, one of the ways the subvert crowd keeps our politicians in line is basically the only way you get elected is you're easily blackmailable, finance, or you're a deviant. McCarthy tried to warn our grandmas and grandpas about what was going on. And in 2000, when the Soviet archives were opened, lo and behold, the very people Joe McCarthy said were communist infiltrators, guess what? There they were. This book here I found on Amazon. It's called The Truth at Last. Was Joe McCarthy right? And it gives a chronicled series of events. You can find this on Amazon. A chronicled series of events. I think Joe McCarthy was right. Big time right. And you can get that on Kindle, so you don't have to wait in the mail for a week or two to get it. You can go, boom, there it is. Was the destruction of this country planned? Yeah, it was. People that tell the truth about what's going on, they are big time slandered to where nobody wants to even hear what they have to say. And some folks find it so hard to believe that a conspiracy existed that was so immense, it was incomprehensible. The people just didn't want to believe that such a conspiracy existed. Well then, folks, you need to read this book, A Conspiracy So Immense. Also available on Amazon. Countless books. There's also been movies. There have been movies and things of that nature made over the years. And the leftists say, oh, that's just Cold War propaganda. Why is people like that so pro-communist, pro-socialist? Why are they so pro-misery? That everybody be equally poor and equally miserable. If socialism and communism was so great, why the Berlin Wall? Anybody caught trying to escape was shot to death. Why do people go through 90 miles of shark-infested waters just to get away from communist socialist Cuba if it's supposed to be paradise on earth? Because communism and socialism is a living hell. Worked out real good in Venezuela, and that's in our time. That was recently. How do the communists, how do the socialists recruit people? How do they get people to believe all their BS? They look for the downtrodden. if they're not youngsters in school, young skulls full of mush, that you can pollute and mold their minds into believing the horse crap that you're selling. How do they do it? They prey on vulnerable people. A movie that was made 71 years ago, and you can watch the entire thing on YouTube. I have the video, which I'll show you. But you can watch the entire thing on YouTube. It was made in 1949. And the leftists hate it. Not because it's untrue, but because it is true. They hate it. This is the movie. It's called The Red Menace. Made in 1949. And that movie there really shows how the left preys on vulnerable people. Towards the end of the movie, about three quarters into the movie, a feller who was a Communist Party member by the name of Henry Solomon, that's what his character was. And he said some things in there that, man, really just hit home. He nails it. He said, I thought I could be a communist and a Democrat. Joe McCarthy called them commie-crats. And he said he's not talking about the millions of loyal American Democrats. He's talking about the small part, at least back then, he called the commie-crat party, because calling them Democrats is insulting to the millions of American Democrats. He goes, they should be properly called the commie-crat party. And Joe McCarthy videos and things that he said way back when are available on YouTube. You can watch his speeches today. One I highly recommend is called Joe McCarthy, Last American Hero. And he gives a chronicle events of things that happened. And the one about calling them the commie-crap party, that's one of the videos as well. But anyway, that movie, The Red Menace, that really said a lot. And in Henry Solomon's speech, the reason he gave that speech is because the party committee wanted him to resend a poem that he wrote. Now, apparently, Henry Solomon in the movie, his character, he was a writer and he was a poet. And he said things that the party didn't like. Not because they were lies, but because they were true. And I guess it made the party look bad because it revealed truth that the party didn't want revealed. And then he tears up his party card. And then he really lays it on the line what the Communist Party really is. Like I said, that movie is called The Red Menace, and I highly recommend you can watch it. You can watch it in the safety of your own home. It's called The Red Menace, made in 1949, 71 years ago. Watch it on your phone, watch it on your computer, wherever you choose to. There was another movie made in 1986. Actually, it was a miniseries, 12 hours long. I was serving in the military when this happened, when this movie was made. And what the movie was depicting was the year 1997 was supposed to be 10 years after Soviet occupation. Now, they did put something in a book made by the same name, which I actually have. I just don't have it with me here right now. It's up in my other library. And they made a book by the same name as the movie. It was called America, spelled with a K. Actually, this is it. This was the miniseries. And there's Mr. Christopherson. Trying to find a video or DVD of that, good luck. I found that back in about 2003 or 2004. That very set I just showed you. Back then it cost me $100. If you can even find it, I've seen it go as high as $500. That's if you can find it. However, you can watch the entire 12-hour miniseries movie on YouTube. If you have the time on your day off, I highly recommend it. Once again, the left hates it with a passion, because it shows what life is like under communist control. And that's what they want to do to this country. Nasty Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and a host of others. And things they show in that movie, some of the movie kind of gets kind of droll, but, watching that movie is a real eye-opener. And that miniseries, America, that really tells a lot. Now, what it was supposed to be is a depiction of what the United States was like after 10 years of Soviet occupation. I tend to jump back and forth between topics. Anyway, a book by the same name, up until not too many years ago, you could find it for virtually nothing on Amazon, and now good luck finding it. But they put something in the book they did not put in the movie. Now, in the last recent years, we've heard the term EMP. Now, the far right and the militias and all those folks have been talking about EMP for years. And the leftists and the media, oh, you're just a bunch of kooks, you're a bunch of crackpots, blah, 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 blah. All the usual rhetoric. All the insulting terms, tinfoil hatters, and all that kind of garbage. But anyway, then cooler heads prevailed and started listening. Well, let's try to prove these people wrong. It was proven right. EMP can actually happen, and the technology for it has existed for a long time. In the book, they mentioned in the prologue of the book EMP. And that's how the grid was shut down. And that's how the Soviets and the other communists were allowed to invade. In the remake of the movie Red Dawn, the original was 1984, I believe, and the remake was in 2012. They did show that all the power went out, and that's how they were able to invade without anybody knowing. That's right, EMP. And, I don't care what the left says about me. I don't care about all their slanderous terms. As far as I'm concerned, they can go to hell on a rocket sled. Because they don't like it when people start revealing the truth about what their true agenda is. And I would say it all goes back. Every last bit of this world domination all goes back to the House of Rothschild. That's right. Those international world bankers, the House of Rothschild. Years ago, I remember reading something in some publication where they were talking about an interview that happened many, many, many years ago. And it was the gal who, at that time, was the matriarch of the modern-day Rothschild family. And she was asked various questions, and she made various statements. One of the statements that she made that I remembered ever since, it was talking about all these wars in the world. And she said, quote, "If my boys didn't want wars in this world, there wouldn't be any." Now that tells you who's behind all the wars that are going on. And if they wanted to end all the wars, future wars, it was a year or two ago that a bomb called the Moab, mother of all bombs, was dropped on ISIS. I say drop the Moab on the House of Rothschild with every last Rothschild in it, and all this will begin to end. But anyway, I'm getting kind of long, and my video is probably going to shut off here in a couple minutes, so it hasn't shut off already. But anyway, I wanted to get this out. For those who are new to all this and they're looking for direction, I, being an old school, I'm going to try to point you in directions. Previous videos I've made on other topics. These books you can find about Mr. Joe McCarthy. who tried to warn our people decades ago. And they hounded him to his death. They hounded him out of office. Movies like The Red Menace. Movies like America, spelled with a K. Here's another good one, which you can watch on YouTube. It's called Invasion USA, made in 1952. Not the one by Chuck Norris, made in 1990, but this one, made in 1952. There's all kinds of anti-communist propaganda on YouTube, and the left is just insanely just angered about it, because, oh, that's just Cold War propaganda. It was forewarnings of what was to come. And as we see today, the left has made far more strides than anybody ever could believe. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Like I said, I'm totally anti-socialist and I'm totally anti-communist. And before I sign off, I just want to say one last thing. One last message. Antifa sucks. Take care, friends.